The partial government shutdown will continue until at least Monday after the House adjourned this morning without taking action on a GOP-led plan. It comes after the Senate agreed on a measure to fund the Department of Homeland Security, but exclude funding for immigration enforcement. Let's go live now to CBS News congressional reporter Taurean Small. Taurean, good to see you today. So at this point, any clarity as to just how long this shutdown will last?
Well, Mugo, it feels like deja vu on the Hill. Just yesterday, we heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson and Leader John Thune in a joint statement saying they're committed to now passing this DHS spending deal that Republicans brokered with Democrats in the Senate. But House Republicans shot down last week before they adjourned for the 2-week recess that's still ongoing. What we know now is that Mike Johnson is sure that his conference is on board with this two-pronged approach, one being funding every agency except for ICE and CBP through this Senate bill, and then the other being through budget reconciliation that would fully fund for a couple of years ICE and CBP. Whether or not that will get a vote sooner than later is to be seen, because we know that, as you mentioned, they didn't go through unanimous consent through pro forma, which is just another procedural matter that would be essentially saying everyone in the conference or everyone in the chamber is on board with this. So we'll see whether or not Speaker Johnson is willing to bring folks back earlier from break as soon as next week to get this over the finish line. I want to point out President Trump is lending his endorsement to this plan in a post on Truth Social. He said that Republicans are committed and unified in paying for the Department of Homeland Security. Here's his post right there. He's putting the blame on Democrats as usual, saying that, in his opinion, they do not want to fund this because of their, in his words, radical left policies. But ultimately, he ended that post by saying he's looking forward to, through executive action, funding the folks under the Department of Homeland Security. What that would look like will probably mirror his payments toward TSA employees as this process rolls on. But again, the matter of how long this process will take is what everyone's watching, considering the reconciliation bill might take some time, Mugo.
Yeah, and Taurean, part of this plan includes separate conversations, right, about ICE reforms. Where does that stand?
Yeah, well, Leader Thune, before he broke for the recess, said that the ship has sailed for conversations about reforms or changes to immigration enforcement, considering the fact that Democrats aren't willing to fully fund the agency. I pressed Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, on that and asked why he was so adamant to say that his Democrats in his chamber were willing to support this deal, considering that it essentially gave Republicans what they want. It would fully fund every agency, and Republicans could go at it alone to fund ICE and CBP without those guarantees of reform. Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, said that he still thinks that there's room and opportunity for these conversations to persist. He said he has other examples like conversations about health care reforms that he says is ongoing with his Republican colleagues. For the government shutdown previously, he said concessions were made in order to get in order to reopen the government previously. So he believes that the pathway is still open, though. I would have to point out again, Republicans aren't necessarily willing to work with Democrats because they're essentially forcing them to go at it alone.
Okay, Taurean Small on Capitol Hill for us today. Thank you so much.